All right, welcome back everyone to the Factory Berlin Mobility Hackathon supported by Audi Denkwerkstatt. It's Sunday morning, it's 9 a.m. I'm so glad that you all tuned in so early. I hope you all had a great day yesterday. I heard that some of you worked really late, which is promising because I'm sure you've worked on something very tangible and we'll see some great pitches later on today. Today, because some of you worked very late yesterday, you'll have the opportunity to now grab a coffee first. We have a great panel of experts for you this morning who will give you some inspiration around sustainability topics and sustainability issues and some insights that will help you throughout the day. And to kick things off this morning, we have Malte from Audi Denkwerkstatt who will do a quick recap of the day yesterday. Malte, please come on stage.
Thanks, Hendrik. Hello to everyone as well from my side. I'm Malte and I have the pleasure to welcome you here to the second day of our remote mobility hackathon. I'm one out of 5 venture developers at the Audi Denkwerkstatt based in Berlin and working in the factory. We are well connected to the tech and startup ecosystem. Yesterday, I had the chance to support the different hackathon teams in many different remote sessions. It was a very intensive day, I have to say, with a lot of interactions. We had 185 viewers on YouTube during the Fireside chats. More than 500 Slack messages were sent among the hackers, and the Miro tool was the number one tool we used during this time. And one thing is for sure. All our discussions were challenging, but full of fruitful ideas and concepts. The sessions also showed how complex our topic of sustainable urban mobility is. Furthermore, it demonstrates that cooperation and co-creation with different stakeholders is one of the critical success factors for sustainable mobility solutions in cities. After these intense hackathon days, I have to say it impresses me really to see how fast the community is working on solutions regarding our challenge. It showed in a nutshell the magic of people with different skills coming together and create something new. All of you contributed with your personal skills and accomplishments like your curiosity, courage and persistence. Thanks for this special engagement. I would like also to say thank you to all other experts who were so supportive yesterday. The Audi Denkwerkstatt team is very proud to have all of you here on board, even if it's Sunday morning. I hope you can again activate all your energy for this final sprint session today. Go for it and good luck.
Perfect. That is great to hear that you had a great and productive day yesterday. And tonight at 5 p.m. we have the pitches and then of course the awards ceremony afterwards. Now we are moving into the expert panel and we will again hear about a couple of sustainability challenges from our experts. And we will hear how sustainability in general will move into the key focus for many corporates, including corporates in the mobility space. I'm going to switch on my camera and today we hear from Cyril from here, from Matthias from Audi Denkwerkstatt and from Christian. And we're going to start with Cyril from here, who I hope is on the line now with us. Perfect. We can't hear you yet. I'm not sure if that's... Okay. Now we should be able to hear you. How are you, Cyril?
Yeah, I'm very good. Can you hear me now?
Perfect, thank you. Great to hear from you, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I will start sharing my screen. Just let me know if you can see me now.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
You can see me. Okay, perfect. All right, so thank you all. I'm very grateful from Audi Denkwerkstatt to welcome this Fireside discussion around sustainable mobility. So my name is Cyril Lemont. I'm part of Here Technologies, and we are like a leading platform in terms of location technologies and Obviously, this is one key component of defining sustainable mobility system. Thank you all also to participate in this fireside discussion this morning. I know it's quite early Sunday morning, but obviously this topic is really, really passionating, and I hope we'll have a great discussion all together. Obviously, when we think about mobility, we really need to redefine the way we think about moving in our cities and towns. We've learned yesterday around urbanization with growing population in large city centers. We all know about legislative constraints around CO2 emissions and penalties that's now happening, spanning the car from the city centers. There is a strong push for like visions to zero, enabling like a more sustainable mobility when it comes to pollution, when it comes to death fatalities, but also when it comes to security breaches, protecting people data, for instance. And of course, we are living now in a very heterogeneous society when we need to consider like youngest generation that doesn't consider having a driving license anymore. But we need also to think about aging population, which are still very active and that still want to move around. So I think it's really like a tipping point for us to move from private car to walking, cycling, and public transport. We need to think from a single mode of transportation to an intermodal journey. And we need also to think about dynamic pricing to adapt the on-demand economy to the mobility economy in order to make sure that we can offer a sustainable way of moving around at the different days of the week and different hours of the days. All that together doesn't come as a given, right? There's a lot of private and public companies that operate in the mobility ecosystem, and there's like many challenges that needs to be overcome. One typically for mobility service provider is like, how do I turn my business into a profitable business? For public transport company, is really about turning into the digital age and being able to enhance operational zone of mobility beyond the city centers, engaging with suburban area, engaging with the first mile and the very last mile with micro-mobility services. For the automotive industry and for the automakers, and we'll learn more about Matthias in a few minutes, right? It's really a question about how do you embrace the new customer digital life? How do you make the car part of that mobility ecosystem? And for city authorities, that's also heavily important to really question nowadays, how can you offer equal level of accessibility to transport to everyone? That's just a set of few questions, but that's just like pinpointing the fact that the mobility ecosystem is shared across different stakeholders, being the private sectors, being the public sectors, and being the end user together around that ecosystem. However, just like phrasing those questions like this would not be still very valid, but will not be enough for today, right? Because we all know that we are facing a huge disruption with the coronavirus. The coronavirus is going to have like profound and lasting impact on mobility. As soon as we saw the virus happening, there was immediately a need of service differentiations. There is a need for different mobility companies, such as ride-hailing company, to start differentiating their services to ensure revenue during the lockdown. We also saw how the mobility ecosystem is organizing to really support first responders like health workers to be in a position to still moving around and to still in a position to save people. And this is also bringing a new dimension, right? Which is the zero contamination dimension, which is the social distancing dimensions, when we need now to move into a new area of contactless mobility. So for sure, we see also happening on top of the different trends that I was explaining before, a need to start from moving people to bring the word to people and to start moving also good to people, to bring the words to people. We need also to start from thinking we are moving together collectively in a way which is much more protecting sensitive to people and contactless mobility. And we need also to move from a fragmented network where everyone is operating his services to a much more orchestrated ecosystem. We are now at tipping points, and probably tomorrow, city will start moving again. The question to us, which is basically asked to the entire mobility community, is like after mobility collapse, how do we plan city planning today? How do we start planning mobility of tomorrow? What is the best scenario for us to start moving again? And there will be different scenarios that we can all approach. There's like the V shapes, the U shape, the L shape, but there's certainly a winning scenario that we can see happening. And that winning scenario is, to my opinion, the sustainable mobility ecosystem scenario, when we can all together rethink how we want to move around. I think to basically meet that sustainable mobility ecosystem together, we need at least to overcome 5 challenges. One is really around operational efficiency and service differentiations. There's still a need for mobility service provider to turn their business into a profitable business. They still need to plan, to operate, to assign a job to the drivers, to go into post-trip analysis and make sure that we are in a position to drive that business in a way that is sustainable and on the way to growth. There is also a way and a need for service differentiation, and not only to consider like one scope of the business, but potentially enlarge the portfolio of mobility services with, why not, starting to move goods. Yesterday in the discussion, that was very insightful to learn about frictionless user experience. I would completely second that position that we need to put the end user at the core center of everything we do. We need to provide seamless mobility, end-to-end journey. It's not enough to say, hey, change your mobility patterns to another one. We need to make sure that that mobility experience will be frictionless, from planning a trip to engaging with the first mile down to the last mile and disengagement with the trip. The social distancing is bringing a new normal into the definitions. It's important to start managing the curb in a way which is different, with precise pickup drop-off location. It's important to redispatch the needs where it does matter. It's important to start to have insights and data around where is the less density occupancy of specific services, what are the peak of charge, what are the peak of use, so we can start moving people in a much more sensitive way. And it's also important to start thinking about fleet disinfections. And I think we'll have like a great insight from Christian from Chargery in a few seconds. Orchestrated, the ecosystem is very important. I think we need to put together at the same table the private company, the public company, and the end user together to start basically address that sensitive mobility. If we think about train moving people, where we need to basically create a space between people of 1 meter, 2 meters, and the occupancy of the train is going to be divided by 2, then it's important for us to start thinking about, okay, what's the alternatives? And we cannot do that alone. We need to partner all together into that mobility ecosystem and make sure that everyone is aligned with that. And the last but not least, green and safe mobility, I think, will be a core component of succeeding in that new era. We need to pursue that vision 0. We need to make sure that our city will be safe, our city will be more efficient, our city will be more convenient for people living in those city centers. To end it up, I would like to say that the need for sustainable mobility has never been so high. We have, I think, a mission altogether to create a mobility as a service platform, which is centered on the end users and delivering value for the city. And as part of Here Technologies, we can offer you an innovation arena. And I would like to hear that you have started using our API during the hackathon. But it's really important for us that we do offer a platform that will help you to maintain your edge and to basically look into your data capacity, whether it is analyzing, processing, or visualizing your data. It's also important for us to enable you to build or branch your own services and leverage your own data on top of our platform. And being a location company, we provide high quality location-based data that will enable you to scale your business globally. So we are happy to support you there into that next big challenges. That being said, I would like to thank you, and I will hand over to you, Hendrik. And I think we will hear about Matthias.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cyril. And I do appreciate the point, especially around how you should partner with other companies and other players in the ecosystem to create this frictionless interoperability. So I think that's hugely important. Thank you so much. Just quickly wanted to mention that, of course, all our listeners today have the opportunity to ask questions on Slido or on YouTube, and we will be able to address them later on. So please feel free and fire away if you have any questions for Cyril or any of the other speakers today. Thank you, Cyril. And next up, we have Matthias, who was here on the stage yesterday and now is in his home office, I believe. Hi, Matthias.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. How has your day been yesterday?
Yeah, I had a great day yesterday, and I found it really inspiring being a part of this opening ceremony, and also getting some insights how the teams were doing yesterday, and also the DJ session yesterday evening was really great. So the hackathon really made my weekend.
Awesome, great. We're looking forward to hear from you now. Thank you.
So now you should see my slides.
Perfect, yeah.
That's perfect. Well, everybody, good morning from my side. I would like to give you some insights on sustainable mobility from my perspective from Audi Denkwerkstatt. Since we were founded, Audi Denkwerkstatt, 4 years ago, we always worked on sustainable products and services. And what we learned during this time, now you should see the slide changing perfect, was that the behavior of our potential customers totally changed. For example, in 2016, we had a first product which had one aspect of compensating CO2 emissions by planting trees. And the user feedback we have got at that time was totally negative. People couldn't really imagine of planting trees for saving the planet, and that was it sounded somehow like esoteric to our potential customers. And so this product was totally flopped, and we stopped it. And 2 years later, we had quite similar ideas, and all our potential customers loved it. So it shows that that user and their behavior and their appreciation for certain topic can change quite fast. So it's absolutely essential to be near your target customer group in order to find out what they appreciate at that certain time when you want to go to market. So from my perspective, the sustainability of a product is a premise, especially when you're talking about a premium product. You can't create a new premium product without being sustainable. That's absolutely essential for people. And especially millennials, they are not only searching for sustainable products, but also for companies having sustainable values. So sustainability is a must-have in today's world. And sustainability has 3 dimensions. The first one is the one which you come about quite easily. That's the ecological aspect. That means the environmental aspect. The second one, the economic Sustainability, that's a point which most companies already have in their DNA, because it's about creating a long-term and long-lasting business model. And the last aspect is very important from my aspect, that's social sustainability. And this social responsibility and social sustainability is growing, or has been growing over the last years. So keep also this fact in mind. At Audi Denkwerkstatt, we always create products which are fulfilling all these three dimensions. That means we want to improve the negative impact on the environment with our products. We want to create a long-term economical value, and we are only working on business models which do not harm or exploit any person or party involved. That's the social aspect. And when talking about the social aspect, we are working right now on this hackathon. You are working right now in a social network, and that's also part of the sustainability, to work in networks and to contribute to each other's mission. That's also, from my perspective, very important. Yeah, now I would like to show you two concrete examples of sustainable products which have been developed within Audi Denkwerkstatt. The first is called EcoMe. EcoMe is an app which you are using on your mobile device, and this app creates transparency about your CO2 emissions, which are emitted when you're using an electric or also a traditional internal combustion driven car. And this first aspect of creating transparency is important, because most people have the wish and the aim to do something good for the environment, but they don't know how to do it. And so to create transparency is the first step. In this model, we have also a gamification aspect, which helps users to create a more positive influence on their personal emissions. And in the next step, there is also a possibility to compensate the remaining emissions, which can't be eliminated. And of course, it's working for all kinds of vehicles. That's quite important to address a maximum big market. The next product has a totally different target group, but quite a similar value proposition. It's focused on millennials moving within a city. And as you can see on the screen in the middle, in a city you're using trains, you might use an electro scooter or even a car sharing car. And you might be interested which means of transportation creates which CO2 footprint for your personal situation. So first of all, we track how a person is moving, and then we create the transparency as we show to the person, hey, in the last weeks, you had exactly these means of transportation, and you created X kilogram of CO2 in this mode of transportation, Y in another, and so on. And by this, a person can learn which mode of transportation has the lowest footprint, and he or she can try to change her or his behavior. And then there's also the second aspect. If there are remaining CO2 emissions, and there will be, obviously, we offer different projects which are locally trying to compensate CO2 emissions by, for example, planting trees. Now our target group is really happy, and it's important for them to have local access and see in front of their door, so to say, what they are doing positively as a community for helping the planet and the environment. Well, Whenever you develop a product, and I think this point is not new for most of you, it's important to be close to your target group, to your customer. And as you can see on this picture here, if you're creating a travel product, for example, you might just stand in front of the Brandenburg Gate and catch the first tourist you get in front of your polling board, and can try to get honest feedback on your product. That's very important. You start your mission, your product, with a lot of assumptions, and your first job is to check whether all these critical assumptions for your product are true or false. And the sooner you find out about that, the better. And so the first job is to find your potential target group and to confront them with your idea. And for this, you have to make it testable. As you can see here on the smartphone, there's a sketch app. And it's very important not to sell your product to your customer group, as your goal is to find out if your assumptions behind it are true or false. And so let your target group test your product and ask questions which help you to figure out, is the assumption behind it true or is it not? And that can be a really frustrating process if you have a lot of positive spirit and you're totally convinced that's the best product the world has ever seen. And then one after the other of your potential customers tells you, no, I don't need it, or I don't understand what you want. I don't need such a product. And that can be really frustrating, but it's really essential. Take this reality check and make something out of it. It's not about having the right or the wrong assumption. It's about getting in contact with reality and accept reality. Then you have the chance to build a product which is really, really valuable. And we at Audi Denkwerkstatt, we're doing exactly this. Our entrepreneurship teams, they are testing their product from the second day on. The first day they have ideas and create assumptions, and the second day they go out and test it. Sometimes it's hard to find the target group, especially in B2B sector. You have to find and get creative to find your target group, but that's your first job to do if you want to create a product with lasting value. So, and I hope you all had the chance to work on your products yesterday, and maybe you will find some time today for testing your product. Phone somebody who could be a potential customer and try to get honest feedback and check whether your assumptions are right. And then I'm totally convinced that we will see great products this evening. Yeah, for us as Audi Denkwerkstatt, this process of using all three dimensions of sustainability on the one hand side, and on the other hand, to focus on our customer and his or her needs was the most important point to create a successful innovation unit. And as we were awarded last year from Capital Magazine as being one of the best innovation labs in Germany, I think this methodology is totally proven, and I can just recommend to you, try to stick to your customers and take care about all three dimensions of sustainability. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matthias. And I think the products that you've presented speak for themselves. So really looking forward to what comes out of the hackathon and what comes out of Audi Denkwerkstatt in the future. Again, we might have some questions later for you, but I want to move over to Christian from Chargery, who's on the line. I see. Hi, Christian. Looking forward to hear from you. Sorry, we can't hear from you yet. Give us 1 second. Oh, can you check that your microphone is on? Still can't hear you.
Give me a
Now we
second.
can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It's remote, right?
No.
What can you do?
Yeah, no worries. I don't know. My other headphones didn't work. So yes, I'm Christian. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chargery, and maybe a few years ago I have been like at the same stage as you guys are today. And I want you to give a little bit insight what we guys are doing at Chargery, and also why sustainability is very important for us. And that's something I want to present you in the next upcoming minutes. So Chargery was founded a little bit less than 3 years ago, and currently we are more than 100 employees, and we are operating in all major German cities, and also in the next few days we are opening our first foreign operations in the Netherlands, and therefore we are, of course, we're very excited about. And at Chargery, our vision is to achieve a real relief for cities by 2025, and therefore we set as ourselves the mission to enable future mobility concepts. And future mobility concepts could be all of the shared mobility concepts like car sharing or scooter sharing, bike sharing, whatever. And this enabling of the future mobility is exactly what we do at Chargery. So therefore, I can give you that little overview. We combine our services with so our services, for example, are cleaning car sharing cars, charging car sharing cars. That's basically how we start. Therefore, our name is Chargery. Or swapping batteries for scooter providers or e-bike sharing providers, and we combine that with our own developed highly intelligent software. And the software is basically the core of Chargery, because it helps us to optimize all of our operations. And our software is basically the key also for our customers to really operate their fleet really efficiently. And we combine both the software and the services with own developed infrastructure solutions. So sometimes it makes sense to also implement hardware in a product offer. And for example, one example for our infrastructure solution are decentralized charging spots. So for example, when it comes to swapping batteries for e-scooter providers, we have developed decentralized charging spots so that our employees do not have to go back to one central spot, but to many decentralized. So with that, we could achieve that our operations are more efficient, and therefore the operations of our customers are more efficient as well. And so our guarantee to our customers is that their vehicles are more or less always available for their customers. So we enable their mobility concepts that they can basically focus totally on acquiring customers, and we help them with all their operations so that they can really focus on their strength. But why is sustainability very important for us? And therefore, when speaking of sustainability, I would differentiate between the ecological sustainability and the social sustainability. I think ecological sustainability, especially in the mobility part, and especially in the shared mobility sector, is basically it should be a standard, because if you are not acting sustainable, sustainability is a key for the transformation in mobility, and therefore it should be a standard for every idea, or for every new startup coming up within the mobility sector. So to give you a quick example, how you can see the ecological sustainability part within our business is whenever operating, or whenever offering a service to one of our customers, every operation is streamlined to sustainability. So, for example, when swapping batteries, we only use green.
Diese Konferenz wird nun aufgezeichnet.
Green vehicles and green electricity. So we only do it with electric cargo bikes, and sometimes also with electric vans, but everything is completely sustainable. And on the other hand, for the social sustainability, this is at least as important for us as the ecological part. Especially since we are offering services to our customers, it is kind of a people business, because of course, the total process we are offering to our customers is completely driven by our software. But at the end, the service itself needs to be performed not by a machine or by a computer. It needs to be performed by a human being, and therefore we see people as the core of our business. And for us, therefore, it is really, really important that, especially in jobs like service agents, so the people who are performing the services, that with these kind of people, we are only working with permanent employees. So we have never been using gig workers, or also will never use them, because that's very important for us. You can really, of course, it's better for them because they have permanent jobs, etc. But of course, it also has an advantage for us, because when you have people you can rely on, it's on the long run. It's also business. If you look at your business, it's also not more expensive, because you don't have to recruit people all the time, because if they really like their job and you treat them very, very well, they stay in your company for a long time, and that's what we see with our service agents as well. And on the other hand, if you treat them well, if you pay them well, the quality and the efficiency is also way higher if you just use gig workers who change all the time. And so it doesn't only make sense from the sustainable point of view, it also makes sense from the business perspective. So, and last but not least, my personal tip, if for every new mobility idea, for every new mobility idea which could be transformed in a startup, is that you should not choose if sustainability is important or not. It should be a standard. Otherwise, from my point of view, you will not succeed, because if you look, for example, at the social sustainability part, it is sometimes, or more often, it is kind of a standard requirement by our customers that we are only using permanent employees, and that will become standard in all sectors. So my tip for you guys is that sustainability should be standard, and then you can really focus on the content of your idea, and that's at least for us has been a reason for our success lately. Yeah, that's it from my side. And now I very excited about the Q&A session.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great. I hope Matthias and Cyril could quickly join us for a couple of questions. If you guys are still on the line, great. There you are. Perfect. So I don't see any questions from the audience, but I'd love to hear from you, Matthias. You obviously mentioned that consumers are demanding sustainability and that it's becoming more and more important. But on the other hand, of course, with the coronavirus situation, we see a little bit of an economic downturn. So I would love to hear your perspective. Do you think car makers like Audi, that this situation will boost the sustainability agenda, or will it set it back?
I'm totally convinced that the coronavirus and the lockdown and now the restart are pushing sustainability, because it's a great chance. Now we had time to rethink and to set up our starting position for the restart, and I'm totally convinced that people will demand sustainability even more, because now the world has learned that if there's a severe problem, we can all react differently. We can even stay at home for 8 weeks, totally, in many countries even longer. And so why shouldn't we do to save our planet? And I think this demand will grow even more. And only companies, also car makers, who are purely focusing on the ecological change, they will have the possibility to get a good starting position. And I think Volkswagen, with our CEO, Herbert Diess, he's really focusing on electric mobility. And from my perspective, that's 100% the correct setting right now.
Okay, that's great to hear. And Cyril, do you think when we now go back and you said that we might see mobility moving close to 100% sooner rather than later, do you think we'll see in the data that people are choosing more sustainable ways of working, or how do you think consumer preferences will shift?
Yeah, I think the mobility ecosystem will be heavily relying on people sharing data. I think it's extremely important to understand the mobility patterns of people moving around. It's important to think about people moving in a way which is much more sensitive than it is today. It goes from multiple different examples, such as I need to understand low density routes or low density roads, because those are the ones I want to take. We need to support, for instance, the public sectors to understand how people are moving around and what are the peak of charge, so then they can better manage their networks to deliver the services where it does matters. And from all that perspective, I think data will be core in order to enable, let's say, people to own a mobility ID, which will manage them to basically address different transportation modes together at different point of time of the day. And from that perspective, I think sustainable mobility also means that we need to take care of that very sensitive personal data of people moving around, and to manage that carefully in an environment which is safe, private by design, and that will ensure, different player in the ecosystem, being the private sectors or the public sectors, together to basically dispatch that mobility as a service platform.
Great. And Christian, do you think in a couple of years from now we will see more or less mobility services startups coming up?
I think it's not a question for me that the market of shared mobility is going to grow in the future. I mean, there will be. I don't think that it will be the same players as it is today. There will be some players from today also operating in the future, but there will be a lot of companies going bankrupt, and a lot of new players will enter the market, and that is what it's going to be really interesting about.
Great. And maybe we can close this round by quickly everyone sharing their perspective on what mobility should look like in 2025. So maybe starting with Cyril, what kind of mix of mobility services would you like to see in 5 years from now?
Well, I would like to basically see a mix of mobility means that sort of like encompasses every single transportation modes that we can think about, and make sure that at the end of the day, we are providing together a frictionless user experience for the end user. I think every city in the world will be quite different. So I think it's also important for us to think about scalability, to understand that Berlin is not Paris, that Paris is not London, and that London is not Singapore. And we need, of course, like back to what we learned from Matthias, we need also to build services that will meet the market demands at a very local points, and make sure that we can enable that diversities of transportation modes together.
Fantastic. Matthias, your opinion?
I would love to have a mobility world in which the customer is standing in the center. That means for me as a customer, it's seamless to use this mobility. And of course, it should be emission-free. And the third point, it should be really noiseless. That's a point which is stressing me all the time in today's traffic, that buses and trucks and also cars are sometimes very loud, or motorcycles. And if all that would be really noiseless, that would be a dream for me, to have a silent city, which is really worth living.
I definitely agree. Christian, how about you?
I would have basically the transformation of the city itself being in the center. So I think it can't be the goal to have as many cars, as many vehicles in the city. It should be the goal that every city is more livable, and as of course in a sustainable way, and therefore all mobility concepts should enable this kind of vision, and that's today we see already some things happening during the Corona crisis, especially in Berlin. New bike lanes are opened, and that's something I think should be continued. That there will be more green again in the cities, and less privately owned vehicles.
That sounds great. We have one last question from the audience, which I think maybe is great for Matthias. The question is, will the crisis shift venture capitalists' interests to more sustainable approaches in mobility investing? So are they not going to look into the hundreds copycat or something, but really looking for more sustainable solutions?
Absolutely. I'm quite convinced that this will happen, because you've all heard of the Green Deal from the EU, for example. And so there's a clear direction that investments will only be more attractive if they are fully sustainable. And so I'm really convinced, on the one hand side, we have this market pull, as people want to live with sustainable products and want to buy them. And on the other hand, also for the regulations are directly pointing towards the sustainable direction. And I think there's no way for venture capitalists to ignore this trend.
Definitely, and I think a couple of German VCs have pledged last year that they're only going to invest in startups that have a positive impact. So I definitely agree that this will be hugely important moving forward. Great, thank you so much for the panel. I think that was great insights and super helpful for the teams. And I think we'll see you later at the pitches. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you for your inspiration.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Great. So now is the time to continue with the hacking and really move into the last stages of wrapping up your pitches, building your pitch decks. I think the deadline is at 5 p.m. At what point we'll have the pitches. I'm really looking forward to that, to join that. And then, of course, later we'll have the award ceremony at the end of the day. And as we heard yesterday, there's a couple of prizes up for grabs. So hopefully that will be great motivation on the Sunday morning. So good luck, get started, and I'll see you guys later at 5.